What's up guys, Shawnthebro here. We are back for another episode of the fighting game tutorial. So this time we are going to be doing actual collision checks against enemies or objects when you're using attacks that have hitboxes attached to them. So if you remember in the last episode, we made the proximity and strike hitboxes, as I was calling them. The proximity is essentially the yellow one that's going to indicate an attack is coming and if it is going to be high, medium, or low, and all of that. And the strike hitbox is the one that actually does the damage. We are going to be furthering that functionality just a little bit to add damage to it, because last time we only added the display, which we use as a cube, and the location, which, you know, we obviously used to put the hitbox where we wanted to put it. So if you remember in the last episode, we did this part in the Anim BP where we connected these Anim notifies to events that allowed us to spawn hitboxes. The only thing you're going to need to do in here is add your hitbox damage variable. But to do that, you will have to add that to your code class. So we only have two things we're adding here. So if you've been watching the tutorial, you'll be caught up to this. But in your hitbox actor that you made last time, add a hitbox damage float property. So this variable is just the damage that your hitbox is going to do. It should definitely be 0 by default, because things like proximity hitboxes shouldn't necessarily actually do any damage. And you might have projectiles that have hitboxes that you don't want to do damage but might stun or something along that line. So 0 is definitely a valid value here. And then make sure you rebuild or just build and then compile in the engine. That way you get this new variable. And then set hitbox damage in your active attack, in your strike hitbox. So if we go to that, which let me think of which one it is. I think it's rifle punch. Oh, I always get the wrong one. There we go. So you'll see attack active is here when he's at the... Whoops. When he's about to start actually doing his attack and the red hitbox is spawned. When that happens, we're going to want to apply a damage so that when the hitbox is spawned, make sure you do it before the hitbox is spawned. When the hitbox is spawned, it's going to go into here and do all the same logic we did last time where it spawns it. But I added a new event this time. So I added a check collision event, which I made right here. And if you want to know how to make a new event, you just right click, add custom event. This guy right here. And then you can rename him and make him do whatever you want. For us, I am going to be doing something a little bit wonky. I'm going to be honest. And there's a very good reason for that. That is because the next episode is going to be about controlling two players and allowing yourself to have two real life players, not AI or anything like that, but actually being able to take control of two players with two different controllers or on the keyboard, whatever. And this next step should actually be done after that. But I wanted us to finish up our collision since we already made the hitboxes, but they weren't actually colliding with anything. So we don't officially have a player 2. Otherwise, we would have a player 2 reference here. But since we don't have player 2, I'm actually checking against myself. Because if you notice when I play, the hitbox actually collides with myself. And that's why I take damage. So you can also see it here. But we don't have player 2 doing anything. That's just a mesh in the level. So I didn't want to go over creating a player 2 just so we can show some collision. The good part is if you copy this blueprint functionality that I have here and the code that I added, all you'll have to do when we end up doing the next episode is change this from get player character 0 to get player character 1. Or what we're actually going to do is we're going to make a variable that has this player character's information. And we're just going to be like player to reference. And we'll grab that and then check is overlapping actor. So the only node you'll have to change next time is this. So if you're just looking at this tutorial specifically for overlapping actors and collision, and you're not following the fighting game tutorial, then this code will still work for you. Just make sure you don't use get player character 0 because you're going to be checking against yourself. You want to check against the object you're looking to collide with. So you could also, and something we could do, is if we get up here, we could be like, oh, if we're colliding, if we punch this wall, break the wall or something like that, and this would still work. In our case, we want to just be punching ourselves or, other characters, which is why I did it this way and decided to show it to you this way. So don't get confused over that, but I did want to explain it since we don't have 2 players or 2 actual players in the lesson or in the level yet. This is simply one character, and this is an instance of the class, but it doesn't have all the stuff you need to control it. Like, we can't take control of this right now with the way our game mode is set up. Okay. But to explain what this is doing, if we look at our hitbox display, if you remember last time, I told you to put no collision on it. No collision. There was a reason for that, and that's because by default, the cube will block all collision, which would mean when we were spawning our hitboxes, we would get pushed off the axis. Well, what we're actually going to want to do, since we want to overlay them over top of the actors and then do a collision check, is we want to switch this from collision presets no collision to overlap all. You don't have to change anything else. Just switch this to overlap all. This other stuff should be checked by default, except for this. The simulate generate hit events. So you don't need to check this. I check this because of something I'm going to do in the future. So I'm not going to go into it now, but if you want, this could be useful to check right now. But other than that, just keep everything the same. It doesn't matter if this is step on yes or no to my knowledge for what we're doing. I made it no because I know I don't need it. But it could come in handy later, depending on what you're doing. So again, don't really worry about this either. Just make sure that you're on overlap all and you'll be good. Generate overlap events is also important. If you don't have this, there will be some functionality that you'll be missing out on. I believe it'll still work without the events being generated. But I would make sure this is checked. For me, this was checked by default when I went into overlap all, but depending on your version of Unreal, I don't think that will always be the case. So if this isn't checked, go ahead and check that. So this is overlapping actor function. It does kind of what it sounds like, and you can read it and get the same idea. But really what all is happening here is it's checking if 2 objects are colliding with each other, if they're over top of each other, if they're overlapping. So when you look at this, you'll see that the reason I'm taking damage here is because I am overlapping with this red hitbox. So all those times you can see my character is coming in contact with that hitbox. So I should be taking damage. I'm overlapping that hitbox. There is a potentially better way to do this, and that's using the hurt boxes, which is the player hitbox that I talked about last episode. We don't have to do that now. And if we go to do that, all we have to do is, instead of checking for the player 2 reference, check for the hurt box, player 2's hurt box. So there's a lot of really easy ways to change this around to make it work for what you need to do by only changing this one value, which is good. That's the system you want. You want a system that is very, very mutable, so you can change it a lot and get the same results or get similar results depending on what you change. So I feel like this is a pretty good way to do it in Blueprint. We will implement the hurt box later. I didn't feel like it was necessary. You can definitely launch a fighting game, and there are a lot of fighting games that don't even have hurt boxes at all. So I don't think it's necessary to go over now, but it'll probably be something we'll go over in the future because it can be very useful, especially in like a practice mode when you're trying to test things out and see what hitboxes look like and where you can hit a player from. So I can see that being useful. But yeah, this is overlapping actor returns a boolean if it's overlapping or not. So if you do a branch and if it is true, so if they are overlapping, you can cast to the fighter template character. Casting this character, this is your default character class or the character class that you want to implement this on. So for example, if we were not doing our player character and this was like a wall or a collectible object or like a car that we wanted to punch and be able to hit, obviously don't cast to your fighter class. Cast to whatever class it is that you need to apply damage to or that you need to perform some function on after it's been hit. And then I'm just calling my take damage function to actually make the player lose health. And I'm using the hitbox damage, which is what we set in the anim BP. If you'll notice in my proximity hitbox right here, I do not have a hitbox damage, so it is just 0. So the proximity hitbox does not do any damage, which is what we want. In the character HUD, I have a second health bar, which is just going back to the first character. Because, again, we don't have a second player yet. We just have that mesh in there. He's not set up to be spawned. But you can go ahead and make it now, since next episode is going to be about player health. And also because you'll be able to see it over the player, the second player. So that you can see that they do, too, lose health, even though, you know, it doesn't really matter if they get hit or if it's just my character that gets hit. It's the exact same code as the get health bar %0. If you forgot exactly how we did that, all you have to do is go to your designer. You can copy these ones that you already made, move them over, and then you just go down here to progress, and then create binding. I already made one, so it's get health bar 1%0 because that's the auto-generated name for it. But yeah, you just go down here and do this, and there you go. When you create this binding, it'll automatically bring you in here, and you'll just have this return node and your entrance function, or whatever this node is called. I'm not sure what it's called when you're in a bound event, but you'll have this guy and this guy, and all we do is get the player character, cast it to our character class, and then get their health. So that's simple enough, not really a big deal, but I wanted to show you that because you can implement it now and it'll work, but we don't want to go any farther until we have our 2 players. I don't know why I have 2 canvas panels here. That is weird. I'm going to take this out. So I just saw that and it's going to annoy me. Okay. That's simple enough, right? So this is showing you your collision. This is what actually checks for the collision and performs a function on it. This part right here is what sets your damage. That way you can actually, you know, make the enemy lose health, or in this case, yourself lose health when a collision occurs. And then this is our player 2's health bar. Our end result is this. So we have our 2 characters. We have hitboxes that don't do any damage like they shouldn't, and hitboxes that do damage upon a proper collision. Next episode, we're going to go over controlling both of these characters. So I'll do it by keyboard because I don't really have gamepads. I can hook up to this easily and show you. So I'll show you just by keys on the keyboard. But the way to do it with a controller, where one player controls one controller and another player controls another controller, is a video I will do. Probably, it could be the next one after that. But either way, it doesn't matter. The point is that controlling them with separate controllers is actually very easy, because you can simply just look for an input device. So that'll be nice. And when we do that, we will go in here and switch these hard-coded disgusting values of get player character 0, and same with these. Get player character 0, get player character 0. We'll switch all those to player 1 and player 2 references. That way we can use the player 1 and player 2 reference all throughout the code, and it'll be legitimate. If you do intend to have any other modes, like a story mode where you beat up thugs or something like that, where you beat up like multiple enemies, or if you plan to have a boss interrupt you or something, you're going to need as many references as you'll need for that many characters. So if you think you know how to do that or get started on that, go for it. It's always good to challenge yourself and think of new ideas. If you get lost or don't want to proceed, that's okay too. I'll be taking a look at it next week and we can compare. Anyway, guys, I'm Shawnthebro. Thank you so much for watching my video. If you enjoyed, please subscribe. It helps me more than anything else, and it shows me that you're interested, so I can continue to make these videos. And also, I know kind of what you guys are looking forward to. That way, I can kind of tailor the content that I'm putting out to that. There'll always be a few things that I do separately, and I'll do any requests that you guys comment down below. So I just did a heart monitor video recently, like an oscilloscope kind of EKG. material in blueprints. So if you're interested in seeing that or videos like that, then feel free to put a request down below, and I'll gladly get to it when I can. But that's about it, guys. So thank you for watching. Tune in next week for making a 2-player game, or having controllers and or keyboard input that goes to 2 separate players in one game. And yeah, that's it, guys. So thank you so much. I'll see you next week, guys.